Hi, I'm Liz. I'm doing my behavior change project on self-injurious behavior and using protective equipment to decrease the rates of that self-injury. The study that I'll be referencing is further evaluation of the role of protective equipment in the functional analysis of self-injurious behavior by Barrero, Vollmer, Wright, Lerman, and Kelly. This was written in 2002. The study looks at two participants with self-injury, both head-directed self-injuries, and they ran a functional analysis to see if using the protective equipment made it more difficult to find the function of the behavior. The research questions were twofold. They were attempting to replicate the procedures from a different study, to see if they got similar results as them. And then also they were looking at the specific self-injurious behavior of trichotillomania, or pulling out of hair, to see if they could use protective equipment to treat that. This is a very interesting study I found because they looked at these two people who had already serious self-injury and were wearing protective equipment during their regular days. One person was wearing a baseball hat and the other was wearing a helmet, and they ran a complete functional assessment on them while wearing the protective equipment and while not wearing the protective equipment to see if they could differentiate the function between of the self-injurious behavior. The interesting thing that I found that they did was they weren't necessarily researching it to see if they could use the protective equipment to treat self-injury, but that ended up being some of what they found out from their study, because when they did the functional assessment with the protective equipment on, the participants had one participant had 0 rates of self-injury and the other had close to 0 rates of self-injury. When they ran the conditions again without the protective equipment on, then both participants had high rates of self-injury. So while I'm not running my behavior change project on the FA necessarily, this was really good data and a really good study to help me out, because it showed that protective equipment can decrease the rates of self-injury. Another thing that I really liked about it was the fact that the one participant was all the way down to just wearing a baseball hat to decrease rates of self-injury. And that's something that's very socially acceptable. So for me, with my client, one of the things that I'm working on is fading out the degree of protective equipment. She started out wearing an arm sleeve that went all the way from her wrist to her elbow to prevent contact of her teeth with her arm. And we're working on decreasing that down to a smaller, like, sweatband type thing, and eventually down to a bracelet so that she can just monitor her own behaviors with that. As far as inter-observer agreement, for the first participant, it was run during 35% of sessions and exceeded 90% across all sessions. The second participant agreement was recorded during 81% of sessions and exceeded 95% across all sessions. So that's pretty strong agreement there. The the things that I saw that were lacking, were limitations for this study, would be that it was only 2 people, and both had already been wearing the protective equipment during their regular day-to-day activities. So it would be interesting to see the change if it was someone who didn't typically wear protective equipment, and then you were able to put it on just to do this functional assessment and see if the same thing would occur. But overall, their research, they were able to replicate the previous study, as well as they found that using protective equipment decreases the self-injury, so it's harder to get a clear function if you're going to have the person wearing this protective equipment during the functional analysis. I apologize, this video is a little bit longer, but I was really excited about this research study. I thought that it was pretty cool. So hopefully I didn't give you too much information. Good luck to everyone on their projects. Thanks. Bye.